In 1987, AC Milan was struggling to achieve notable success after almost a decade without any significant trophies. Silvio Berlusconi had recently taken over the club and appointed a relatively unknown former shoe salesman, Arrigo Sacchi, as coach. However, Berlusconi also recruited three of the club's greatest players, Ruud Gullit, Frank Rijkaard, and Marco van Basten, who formed the core of a team that would dominate not only Italian football but also Europe. Silvio Berlusconi's acquisition of AC Milan in 1986 was a turning point in the club's history. Before Berlusconi's arrival, Milan had been struggling to achieve notable success, with almost a decade without any significant trophies. The club was also in dire financial straits, with a significant amount of debt. Berlusconi's ownership of the club signaled a new era for Milan. He immediately set about improving the team's fortunes by recruiting some of the best players in the world, including Ruud Gullit, Frank Rijkaard, and Marco van Basten. However, Berlusconi also sought to transform Milan's image and make the club a symbol of Italian style and glamour. The July morning with Wagner's Ride of the Valkyries booming out through loudspeakers, and the arrival of 3 helicopters, was a moment that perfectly captured Berlusconi's ambition and flair. The spectacle was attended by 10,000 Milan supporters, and it signaled that things were about to be different. Berlusconi was no stranger to flamboyant displays of wealth and power. He was already a successful media mogul, and his acquisition of Milan was part of a broader plan to use sport to boost his profile and influence. Berlusconi's ownership of Milan would prove to be incredibly successful, with the club dominating Italian football and winning numerous titles over the years. The arrival of Berlusconi also had a significant impact on the way that Italian football was run. He was instrumental in the creation of the new Serie A, which was designed to make Italian football more commercially viable and attract greater investment. This move paved the way for the modern era of Italian football and helped to cement Milan's place as one of the world's most successful clubs. In addition to his work in football, Berlusconi's impact on Italian politics cannot be overlooked. He was elected Prime Minister of Italy 3 times and served in that role for a total of 9 years. Berlusconi's controversial and divisive leadership style has generated significant debate and criticism, but his impact on Italian politics and society is undeniable. Overall, Berlusconi's ownership of Milan was a crucial moment in the club's history and a turning point in Italian football. His ambition, flair, and vision helped to transform Milan into one of the world's most successful clubs and cemented his place as one of the most significant figures in Italian sport and politics. Earlier in the decade, the club had become an unlikely home for British players, such as Joe Jordan, Luther Blissett, Ray Wilkins, and Mark Hateley, who had all worn the black and red with some distinction. However, 1 year after Berlusconi's arrival, Milan's identity was due for an upgrade. Van Basten and Gullit arrived together in the summer of 1987. Gullit cost a world record fee of around £6 million from PSV Eindhoven, while Van Basten, despite a remarkable 128 league goals in 133 games with Ajax, was a relative bargain at £1 million. The 3 Dutchmen. Ruud Gullit was an instant star for Milan. He played in multiple positions on the pitch and was often seen smiling his way through his first season with the club. In addition to his football career, Gullit was also a talented musician and played in front of 3,000 people with his reggae band, Revolutionize. Marco van Basten, on the other hand, struggled with injuries during his first season with Milan, managing only 11 games. However, he still provided a crucial moment for the team by scoring the decisive goal in the season's decisive match, the third in a 3-2 win over Diego Maradona's Napoli, which ultimately clinched the 87-88 Serie A title. After the summer of 1988, Van Basten and Gullit would immortalize themselves with their national team, winning the European Championship with the Netherlands. Their return to Milan with another member of that Euro 88 winning Dutch side, Frank Rijkaard, completed the famous trio known as the 3 Dutchmen or Trio Hollandaise. Frank Rijkaard was signed from Sporting in Portugal, and the sale was so unpopular with the Lisbon club fans that they surrounded the hotel where the transfer negotiations were taking place. Upon Rijkaard's arrival, he moved seamlessly into midfield in front of the central defensive partnership of Franco Baresi and Alessandro Costacurta. The season would feature perhaps the 2 defining games of that era for Milan. In the latter stages of the European Cup, in the semi-final, they would destroy a brilliant Real Madrid side 5-0 in the second leg, the 4th goal seeing all 3 Dutchmen combine in a single moment that summed up their brilliance perfectly. Then, in the final, Gullit and Van Basten shared the goals as Milan battered Steaua Bucharest 4-0. They were 3-0 up inside 38 minutes, completing the scoring just after halftime, and they could have easily won by 10. They retained the trophy the following season, with a solitary goal from Massaro enough to defeat Sven-Goran Eriksson's Benfica in the final. With 5 goals between them in the 2 victorious European Cup finals, the Dutchmen had already established their legend status at San Siro. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, the football team AC Milan, which had some of the best players in the world, was dubbed Gli Immortali, the Immortals. In both 1988 and 1989, Milan had the top 3 players in the Ballander voting, the 3 Dutchmen, Gullit, Rijkaard, and Van Basten, and then Baresi sandwiched by Van Basten. In 1991, Sacchi departed for the Italian national team, but under Fabio Capello, Milan and the Dutchmen had their greatest season ever. They went unbeaten throughout the campaign, scoring 74 goals and winning the Scudetto by 8 points, all in a series that only awarded 2 points for a win. It's no coincidence that this was the only season that Gullit, Rijkaard, and Van Basten were all consistently fit. Van Basten, in particular, was untouchable, scoring 25 goals in 31 games in a division notorious for its defensive standards. But the 1992-93 season saw Milan spend big on new talent, including Dejan Savicevic, Zvanomi, Boban, and Jean-Pierre Papin, and Serie A still restricted each team to only 3 foreigners in any one lineup. This meant that someone had to be left out, and that was most often Gullit. It caused him to frequently clash with Capello, and in 1993, having been omitted from the squad for the Champions League final and with long-term concerns about a knee injury, Gullit was allowed to leave on loan to Sampdoria. The same year, Rijkaard departed for a sentimental return to Ajax, where he would mentor the great generation of talent that would win the 1995 Champions League. But for Van Basten, the end of his time at Milan would be more tragic and would affect his legacy. An ankle injury, which dated back to his time at Ajax and which had worsened because of his determination to play through its resulting pain, would end his career at just 28 years old. Van Basten ignored Milan's advice and chose to have surgery in December of 1992, the day after collecting his 3rd Ballon d'Or. The result was the worsening of the condition, and he would have a 22-screw frame fitted around his ankle. Within 6 months, his career would be over. He would eventually announce his retirement in 1995. But his last game was the 1993 Champions League final against Marseille, where an uncharacteristically sentimental selection from Capello allowed Van Basten to limp around clearly unfit in a game that Milan would lose 1-0. He appeared at the San Siro one more time during a preseason friendly, and even Capello was in tears. Gullit, Rijkaard, and Van Basten were together at Milan for 5 years and only really consistently performed together for 1 full season. But their legacy extends beyond just that. They will be forever immortalized as the key men and perhaps the greatest club team that we've ever seen.